Hello everyone, welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf. We're going to do my next installment of books you should read for Buzzwordathon in June. As per usual, I did my best to find a variety of genres, so we're gonna get into it. They're categorized by name or title in the title. So let's get into, first of all, I think the middle grade, which will be fun. My first recommendation is Mary Queen of Scots, Queen Without a Country. This one is by, I honestly didn't check before I said this, Catherine Lasky. This one is about Mary Queen of Scots, obviously, and this is a journal format style book about her, and it's written from her perspective when she was a teenager. It's written in the year, or written about the year 1553. So this is taking place while she's in France, and she is really in that in-between stage. I read this when I was about 10 years old, 12 years old, and I remember being really informative. I have reread it when I was a teenager, but I haven't reread it since, so I might do that again. It's just such a quick, fun read, but at the same time very heart-wrenching, as she really was someone who was in this awful place of being a queen, yet having no country, and then all of these countries trying to have her be their headpiece, and it was never good to be a leader of an army when there was already a king or queen in place of another country. So it was a really good book and really quick and really fast read if you're needing something fast for Buzzwordathon this month. So a classic middle grade would be Peter Pan. This is not like the children's movie from Disney though, so be warned. This one is snarky, it is funny, it is sassy, it is delightful. This edition has pictures and it is just brilliant. It of course follows Peter Pan as he comes and finds Wendy, Michael, and John, and he takes them away to Neverland. But believe me, it is not all as roses and gumdrops. Is that? It's not the saying, but anyways, you get the idea. It's not all as beautiful as the Disney movie makes it out to be. So definitely recommend checking out this one. It is a fast read, but it is nothing like the Disney movie. Following a classics theme, I think you can pick up Anna Karenina. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, Anne of Green Gables. Anne of Green Gables is a great pick for this readathon, not Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina is way too huge for 1 week. But Anne of Green Gables is delightful. It is also middle grade, and it is a very childlike but very fun reading experience. I also finished it in May, and I loved reading about Anne again, her fiery personality, but you also read the book from other people's perspective around her, more specifically Marilla, and you get to see how people view her and how she is a delight to those around her. She really does bring a joy and a spark to those people in Avonlea and the people at Green Gables. It is a joy to read, and I think you should pick it up. If you want to try Anna Karenina, give it a shot. I recommend it's a great book, but maybe not for 1 week. On a different note, I have here The Pursuit of Mary Bennett. This is a Jane Austen retelling of Pride and Prejudice. I've always felt like Mary Bennett got the short end of the stick in Pride and Prejudice, so I love a good Mary Bennett retelling, and this one I feel like did a good job. This one is by Pamela Mingle, and I love this one. It followed I followed Mary Bennett, and she, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read it, but it followed her as she went to spend time at Pemberley. I think I'm drawing a blank and I'm recommending this, but it was really good for personal growth. It really delved into the characters, and I felt like it was true to Mary Bennett at the same time as giving her her own personal story and not giving others a bad rep. It also gave her a growth and a romance that I really enjoyed. It gave her a love triangle where she actually got a choice, and it felt like in Pride and Prejudice, she never really got a choice. So I really enjoyed this one. It's also short, and I am going to love this book whenever I get a chance to reread it. The Alice Network is an awesome one to read. And even though it's on the bigger side, you'll fly through it, I promise you. It is so fast paced, you don't want to put it down. Every chapter ends on a cliffhanger and it is intense. It follows two women, Evelyn and Charlie, as they go through history together. Maybe that sounds a little dramatic. Well, what happens in this book is, so Charlie is trying to find her cousin after the events of World War II, and Evelyn is a retired spy who was a spy in World War I. And so you have the events of World War I in certain chapters playing out that Evelyn was a part of. Meanwhile, you have the events that they are going through just after World War II as they're trying to find Charlie's cousin together. It is wonderful, it is fast-paced, it is incredible female spies, it is wonderful. I really recommend checking it out. I have never heard a single person say a bad thing about this book. It is brilliant. If you're looking for something with more of a little different spin, I would recommend A Picture of Dorian Gray, or The Picture of Dorian Gray. I always mix up titles this way. I don't know why I do this. Anyways, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It is a paranormal classic. I don't normally like paranormal, but this one I liked. I think I give it 4 stars. I gave it 4 stars when I read it originally. It is not my normal cup of tea, but it is interesting. So if you don't know the premise of The Picture of Dorian Gray, it's about Dorian Gray, who is a very handsome man, and his friend paints a picture of him. And after he sees this picture, he says, oh, if only that picture, like if only I'd ever stay as beautiful as that picture, and then it turns paranormal. It is a really wonderful story of this like evil versus good, and it is just a wonderful piece of Victorian literature. But if you're not into classics and you want to read more classics, but you like paranormal, this is a really great way to get into classics. I really recommend this one if you like that genre. I am not that genre person, but I like Victorian classics, so I think it's a good one. Anyways, and I try to recommend short books for this video because it's a week-long read-along, and some people just can't read big books in this time. So this is why I recommend it. So next up is my Agatha Christie book that I'm recommending for this, because I have to, and that is Lord Edgware Dies. I think this is now, as I've been like recommending it so many times, I think it's one of my favorite Agatha Christie books. It's just so brilliant. I can't help resisting it. It's just perfect. Lord Edgware is a man who dies, and the whole mystery of it is who killed him, because the one person who would benefit from his death is his wife, but she was seen at our dinner party the exact moment when he was shot. So who did it? It's a brilliant story, and Christie really shows her prowess at writing the clues and the evidence of who did it, how they did it, all the things. I think everyone should read this book. But yeah, it's so good. And Agatha Christie you can fly through in a day because she's just so addictive, at least in my opinion. So I think everyone should read this one. So my next book is my nonfiction recommendation, and this is The King's Speech by Mark Luge, I think was his name. This one is very interesting. It's based on the event that took place where King George VI, that's Elizabeth's father, he needed to make that speech on the radio, and he had that speech impediment where he never was able to speak without a stutter before that point, and he had to hire someone to help him. So Lionel Luge ended up being that person. I hope I'm saying his name right. Anyways, he was Australian, and so this book kind of documented how he traveled from Australia all the way through. Mark was his grandson, I believe, and so this book was written after actually the movie was started filming, and he wrote about his grandfather's experience from different paperwork that he had found. I found it to be really interesting. I did lag a little bit towards the end, but I did like how it showed the king relationship with Lionel and their process of how they moved to England and then how they ended up working with the king and how that developed, but also how that impacted royal affairs and just all of those political events. So I really recommend it if you're wanting something about English history or just something in that regard, speech therapy related. It's an interesting idea. Also psychology related, because it was kind of about that too. My next book is The Storied Life of AJvickery by Gabrielle Zevin. Yeah, not Zevins, Zevin. This one is about a man who works in a bookshop, which is always a seller point for me. But one day he discovers this little girl abandoned in his bookstore, and he decides to keep her and raise her. It is a really wonderful story, and this book is told in kind of short story form, but each short story form is told through a book that is done. So in this book, it talks about, so this one's The Luck of the Roaring Camp, and it's a book, and then a little segment that he wrote about it, and then a chapter that relates kind of to that book. It's kind of a short story format about this man's life, and it's just a wonderful story. It's about AJvickery and events that happen to him as he grows into a father, and this small town, this little book club that meets in his town, the different people that hang out around him. It's just wonderful. And if you're into kind of small town contemporaries that really are feel good, but he's a kind of an old curmudgeon that never really changes, but you love him anyways, it's a really great one. So my last recommendation is Loving Luther by Alison Pittman. This one is about Karenina, as she is a nun at a nunnery in Germany when she meets Martin Luther, and then she ends up becoming his wife. This is a historical fiction that is a Christian fiction based in that time era, I think 1500, in Germany. I don't know how to say that without stating the obvious that I just said. It is a really wonderful story about these church leaders that have really changed from Catholicism to Protestantism. That didn't sound right in my head. It didn't sound right coming out of my mouth, but we'll see how it goes. Anyways, it's just a really interesting story about two people who were told that they were never allowed to marry because Martin Luther was a monk. So he signed a vow or a promise that he would never marry, and she, being a nun, told that so that she would never marry. And so they both had to break these vows. And so when they eventually did get married, they decided that they were breaking forever with the Catholic Church in this way. And it's a really interesting story. If you know the church history of it, it's a powerful moment. And then when you're reading a book about it, it's also really interesting with that kind of retelling. So I found this book to be really fascinating about that kind of moment in history. Loving Luther is definitely a really great way for that to happen. I felt like it didn't villainize anyone. It kept everyone to be really open in a way that you could read other books, or you could read real facts, read other documentation, and you could see people for who they really are, or you can make your own decisions, at least about historical people. And I felt like it was a really good introduction if you also were unaware of certain facts about history. So I really enjoyed this one and recommend it. So the last thing to say will be my official TBR for my own Buzzwordathon, and that will be Miss Pym Disposes by Josephine Tay. I'll be reading this for Kate Howe's little summer book club. I have an ebook of it. I found it on sale, so that's really helpful, which I don't have a physical copy, but that's okay. Anyways, I'll be reading that one. Miss Pym, I imagine, is the main character, so it sounds like a proper name. I'm counting it, and I'm excited to pick it up. It sounds like it takes place at a women's college and a lecturer dies, so that'll be fun. A nice mystery. It's really short, under 200 pages, always a win, and that will be a great way to start off the month. So I'm excited. So those are my recommendations that you pick up for Buzzwordathon in June, one of those 10 or something along those lines. What are your recommendations that you pick up or someone else picks up for Buzzwordathon? You can leave those recommendations down below in the comments. Also, if you are new here, please like this video and subscribe, and like this video if you are not new here and you enjoyed it as well. You can also hit that notification bell if you would like to be notified for any new content from me, and I will see you next time with another video. Bye for now.